It's my great pleasure to start this talk, the second of our talk series, and with me today are Thomas Rusche. He's our AI expert and author of many ethical questions. And next to my right here is the curator duo of Alfredo Cramerotti and Auronda Scalera. Alfredo is, besides many other adventures, he's the head of the media Majlis in Doha, director, and Auronda and Alfredo together are also doing the Art Dubai Digital. And today we will be discussing how AI is changing our perception of art, also in the terms of authorship and how we're going to proceed in the future with the idea of a genius and whatever does creation mean in these digital times. So now every one of you will present their own stance on this issue, and then we will follow up with the discussion. So Alfredo, you wanna
Shall I start? Okay, thank you very much for showing up, and it's a pleasure actually to be here in this panel. As Ian mentioned, actually we are working as a curatorial duo. I also have an institutional position, I'd say, in terms of art, media and technology from Northwestern and Qatar Foundation in Doha. But mostly actually we kind of curate works around the world, specifically on the realm of art and advanced technologies. And the idea, it was to talk about the impact of part of this advanced technology, which is AI and generative art on the canon of artistic beauty as well, and ethical implication of it, and how diverse voices actually comes into the play. And I would just maybe start defining that actually AI is not such a new thing. It came up very recently for a very practical reason, ChatGPT, et cetera, but really machine learning, which is the bigger umbrella, let's say, on which specific parts of AI are applied. It goes actually a long way, because it's if you think about I don't know, the way we go from A to B and we use Google Map, it's basically machine learning suggesting sort of a trajectory based on millions of other similar trajectories. And if you think about when you book a car, like through an Uber app, that's machine learning telling you how much that ride costs and how much time it will take it based on millions of other sort of a similar transportation sort of a segment. Or Spotify, another thing actually, you kind of search for a song or want to listen to a song, and it's suggesting a whole other things actually based on millions of other or billions of other users actually similar searches. And but even actually 20 years ago, where Amazon was Amazon for books, you buy a book on Amazon, I remember like early 2000, and you thought, oh, you might also like this and this and that, which it was kind of a curated sort of a suggestion of similar topics that you might be interested, and that's really machine learning in practice. So it's the idea that AI is impacting our life is very concrete, and if it has impacted all these sectors, it's obvious that it's impacting also aesthetics, choices and canons and beauties, and sort of and the art and culture in which we are working actually. So it's the way it's impacting is obviously different. There's no one single recipe for it. It depends on the artistic journey and how artists are using this tool. And the usual sort of a conversation here is that there's the fear that AI is supplanting creativity, so sort of generating art or appropriating art and passing for something else or for someone else. And we're not super concerned about it. And also we're working with artists every day, really, and other curators and institutions like art fairs or museums or collection or marketplaces or production sort of agencies. And the way we conceive actually AI from within the field, let's say, is as a tool. And now, very differently from a video camera or a mobile phone or a brush, if that matters. And so the idea that how is impacting these aesthetic choices is very, very subjective. And
yes, Auronda, you always talk about the subjectivity of these, because you're working on the digital frontier and you're also based in the metaverse, as you put it. So how does this subjective apply of this tool of AI look like in a concrete fashion?
Thank you to be here for first, and I can talk about female artists because as we work together in different projects. That one is called Multiplicity, and we promote female artists that work with technologies because there is this stereotype that female artists are less good in this kind of stuff, but it's not true because more of them they got a PhD in mathematics, physics, AI. And for example, during Art Dubai, we choose some artists like Shogen Chung, and she is like a mastermind of AI, and she trained basically her AI with her thought and her style, and translate these things in a robot. And she paint with this robot training with her thought, and they paint together. It's something that really fascinates because it's so beautiful even to look at. And another artist that we chose was Florencia Brook, and she was one of the first ever female coder in the world, and she made this poetry with AI. She trained the same her own AI, and made this novel about Arab and poetry mixing all together. And in general, all these artists, they are not scared about AI. It's because they know how this works, and they know how to build their own AI. Then that, yes, is a main thing.
I think that's one of the impact it has it actually, that artists started to create their own databases. So you have different ways to working with AI. You can use external databases, like whatever meteorological data in Austria over the last 150 years, or the glaciers or whatever. Like Refik Anadol, actually, you can see here in the fair is a good example. So he's a data sculpture artist using external databases. And it might be the Renaissance architecture archive in the Vatican, or the glacier sort of a volume in the Alps, or the sea level in California. And then
No, only I think that recently he used the Mozart archive to make an artwork.
And this is an artist basically training his algorithm and models on these external databases to reinterpret the visual information of those databases, basically how you sort of absorb this data through a visual channel, let's say. Or there are artists who actually train the algorithms on their own databases. So they build over years a database of their work, and it can be visual work, it could be sound work, it could be text work or poetry, whatever, and then they feed basically the algorithm with that data and produce new work based on their own previous work. And that's super fascinating because it means that, it's also supersede the idea of authenticity and appropriation, because you actually use AI as a tool to explore, to expand your practice very much so.
And this brings me to you, Thomas, because you have the stand that AI is a tool, a very powerful tool, but it always needs the human mind, the human creativity to be fed, to create these archives, to create these databases. So at the end of the day, is always the human who is the artist. How is that?
At least it should be. The question is whether it will be. And that is an ethical question. how the human being can be in the driver's seat of this artificial intelligence creating process. Human being in the driver's seat from creating, producing, distributing the art, presenting the art, criticizing the art. As you might know, you could make critics of your art fair already by AI. And how can humans be in the future the author? And the question goes even further. Do we really wish that humans will sit in the driving seat in the future? Posthumanism is arguing that we humans are destroying Earth, that we humans are the reason for all bad developments. Let's finish the primacy of human beings in the next step of evolution by combining human beings with artificial intelligence to overcome mankind. So we are in a situation from the authorship of an artwork to autonomy of human beings at all this is on stage now.
So you're not only talking about artworks, but also about the human body itself, that we're going to be transformed into some kind of robotic, human, transformational beings?
I think to understand fully the dimensions of change we are facing, we have three perspectives. One perspective, you just mentioned, who I am as a human being. Already today, only by our smartphones, we are changing our minds. Our minds are changed by social media. But going further, by brain-computer interfaces, the way we are thinking will be changed. Already today, by computer stimulation, I will change my behavior. Tomorrow, like it has been LSD and other drugs in the past, getting my brain interfaced with a computer will change my way I produce art. And who I am as a human being when I will be stimulated by a computer tomorrow, which is possible and done in the medicine field already today. So the first dimension, who I am as a person. And what's about integrity of my person when a computer, which could mean another person, as it is in medicine, the doctor is in the driving seat to stimulate the brain of those who are lying in bed. What is about my integrity? First dimension, who I am. This will be and is fundamentally challenged and changed by AI. The second, very important for an artist, what is reality? It's not analog any longer, at least not analog only. We are in a phase of doubling our world by a virtuality which gets more and more interwoven with our analog. And as more the technology goes further, the immersion from one to the other world will have such an intensity and dynamic that you, at the very end, does not know in which world you are. It's becoming one new world. And the third one, who I am, what is the world? Who is the other in the world? The way we treat and we deal and we communicate and behave together as humans will change fundamentally and has changed already during the last 20 years by social media. So all of what it does mean to be a human is on stage.
So your second point, the second world, the double world, so to speak, is that the metaverse? Do you feel yourself based in Auronda?
About metaverse.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
that everyone, now we are living in the metaverse. Just a company asked us to build a huge metaverse of the future for the 2030. And it's a good question because it's a process, even for us, it's a research through all the artists that we met, to all the philosophers that we met. There are a lot of questions. And even is a field that really change really fast, then is a challenge even for us understand what it is a metaverse, no?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we are kind of a sort of a believer in this hybridity because, as Thomas mentioned, we're already there, really. I mean, even if we don't consciously process it, but really kind of if you get hacked from your phone and you don't get access to your profile and emails and messages and social media and WhatsApp and whatever, as it happens, it happened to me as well. It's suddenly you realize that kind of a half of your being, it's not you, it's out there. And the people actually you know and you work with and your kind of children and friends and families, etc., they actually, they interact with your other half and not with yourself. It's kind of a scary somehow, but it's also exciting. And so can I just divert a bit, actually, because the three questions, you know, who I am and what's reality and who are the others, it reminds me, I saw recently a very kind of a pop film, if you want, on a flight, so not a super intellectual thing, but actually it made me thinking. It's called The Animal Kingdom. I don't know if any of you actually have seen it. It's a French film, recent, where they imagine some sort of a dystopian, very present, not the future, set in the present, where I guess it comes from the coronavirus type of idea somehow, in which some part of the human population started to morph into some sort of an animal, or at least they are keeping their human feature but hybridized with some animals. And it's a genetic transformation. And at the beginning, it's just a few individuals, and then it spread out, and then you have suddenly these people who are actually hybridizing with some sort of a, I don't know, wildcat or birds or chameleons or whatever, and they kind of develop. It's like a sort of it's not a disease, but it's an evolution that it can't be stopped. And as the time passes, they become more and more actually this animal-like creature, these hybrid creatures. And the population actually, in that sense, they started first to isolate these individuals, and then as they grow, they started to kind of create these centers for these hybrid creatures to kind of try to corral them and to try to see if they can cure them or they can stop the evolution or whatever. But, you know, it is an open-ended film. It doesn't give any answer, but it's obvious that in the vision, it won't stop. And it will just, the humanity will learn to deal with this hybridity. So there will be some people who actually stay as human as we know, some other people who will actually evolve in a different way, even in terms of language and the way they act and the way they speak and the way they sort of behave. And that made me thinking that it's a sort of a good analogy for this hybridity between, you know, kind of I wouldn't say human and machine, but the kind of a physical and virtual or digital, because we are really at the beginning of this sort of a journey. It doesn't mean that we become machines, but the way we think and process and behave probably will be very much influenced and impacted by the machine we build.
Yes, and also, I mean, I talk to artists who work with AI, and they no longer see the cell phone as a object that's not attached to us, but as an extension of our own body. So you can use the screen, or like screens in general, to dive into a very aesthetic universe, which is where no laws of physics apply. You can build whatever you want. You can create forms that were not possible because you're not restrained by the bounds of material. So this is unbelievable freedom of expression, but it's also, does it become boring when everything is possible? Or do we need some regulations by nature, by physics, or is everything possible in the world, also ethically?
I think the first important point is that we don't get into a fatalistic mood that it will come and technology is so strong that we don't have alternatives. We are the humans. We are the authors of technological development. But there is a huge risk that we lose our position in the driver's seat. And that is for the whole mankind, for each human, and also for an artist, that he loses his capacity to be the unique creator of art by those technologies you have mentioned, where AI is doing it, totally independent from each human. And this is a new phase of AI development, that they do not need us to be fed it. These training data and materials, they find it by their own and produce by their own. So there is the alternative that the artist is really using these techniques, but there is a risk that the artist have a digital competitor with a huge pool of creative views and perspectives. And this must become not only a topic for philosophical debates, but that has to become a topic for artists as well. Because I expect from artists to give me insights of the future development, and I would love to see much more artist devotion on this challenge.
Yes, but if we now talk about artists and AI, there's often this term Instagram artist. And I've never, back in the day, like 5 years ago, no artist would say, I'm an Instagram artist. It was called, yeah, you paint in pink and blue colors, and it's kind of decorative. But now, being an Instagram artist actually is something, it's its own little niche, and it's becoming bigger and bigger, and people take pride in these new aesthetics as well. So you have a totally different, also as a viewer, you perceive different aesthetics. You maybe laughed at a couple of years ago, but now it becomes this screen, this looking at something pleasant. Is that also a mirror of our world? We are faced with so much horror, with so much from all over the world, that we just want to look at something pleasant. Is that a trend you observe in the production of art these days?
Yeah, that is true. For example, there is a couple of artists that is called the Operator, and they call this kind of artist the big screen artist. And but it's true that there are now the figure of curator that they select. Then at the beginning, everyone entered the space and called themselves artists. But fortunately now the quality is going to be more high than...
The Instagram art, I mean, it's a bit derogatory at the beginning, this terms of Instagram artists. There is a grain of truth, actually, that progressively, for instance, just to make an example, the square format of Instagram has somehow impacted the way artists, not how they conceive the work, but the way they present the work. So there is a consciousness about how your work is experienced online, and specifically on Instagram. So it's you really don't plan, probably. Some of the people may, I don't know, but there is this kind of in the back of your mind, there is this idea, okay, I do this work, and then, there is the presentation of the work, which happens online primarily. Obviously, you are at the fair, you are at the museum, but really what circulates your work is the online diffusion of the work, and the online diffusion of the work mainly go through Instagram and this type of social media channels. It could be Discord, it could be Twitter, it could be whatever, but Instagram with the square format is kind of always there. So does it change the production of the artist? Probably not, I would say. but it changed the way the artwork is conceived for mediated, let's say, for an audience, for sure.
And talking about the audience, I can see that Anka Kultis is among us, so I just invite you whenever you have something to say, because she's one of the leading gallerists when it comes to AI art. Here's an empty seat, just jump up here. We're going to open the panel for questions anyways later, but you know, I see you smiling in the crowd, so I can't but invite you to take also a seat, because now we're talking about artists, and you present one of the most interesting artists of the digital era with the Signe Piers here at the fair, so it would be a shame not to pick your brain about these trends. I hope you're not, I don't ambush you, I think okay, then. So this is Anka Kultis from Anka Kultis Gallery from London.
Thank you for inviting me on the stage, and of course, I'm so glad to hear voices about social media artists, what I call social media artists, and how the world evolves from being augmented as cyborgs with our iPhones, even when you start with our glasses. Our glasses helps us to see better. So every technology, including our phones and Google, information we can find, AI, which help us taking decisions or influence our decisions through all kind of algorithms following us, makes us being like kind of cyborgs that Haraway was writing about many years ago, right? So we are like proper cyborgs now, I guess. So internet artists and social media artists have been working since social media exists. And you're right, Signe Piers is one of these artists, Molly Soda, who have been working in this space since many years. And what you were saying about this world where our social media persona is augmented by our real persona in our bodies, Signe Piers calls it, for example, hyper-reality. So we live as a virtual beings. So if we lose our information in social media, as you said, we lose a part of ourselves, but then we still have our persona, like real persona. And for Signe Piers, it's called hyper-reality. And we have a wonderful booth at the fair. We're invited with Signe Piers, and we have her work, a retrospective, 10 years of her work, starting with, she's a reality artist, so this is a great thing. She uses reality as a medium, and her reality is her body, so she makes performances, videos, animations, and she makes digital paintings using pixels as paint, as painters would use oil paint or acrylic paint to mix them together. She mixes pixels with her hand and makes these beautiful digital paintings that she calls liquid paintings. So, yeah.
So you said she uses reality as a medium. That for me is a first that I hear that, and we say we have laws in reality. Do we also need laws in the digital world? Because sometimes, even when you go online, you feel that people are completely detaching themselves from the laws of society, and there's no filter anymore. Is that, do we need regulations, or can it stay free, this universe? How do you think that?
So in general, of course, society needs regulation in such a dynamic, transforming process. But the problem of regulation, law is always a decade behind technology. So the newest EU regulations are based on facts 5 to 10 years ago. You have always a big gap. Second, I love in the artist's world that they are free from regulations. They only need one regulation, namely the rights of authorship. But otherwise, they have the full range of possibilities. And talking about digital possibilities, don't forget the revenge of the analog. Don't forget this vinyl. Don't forget that books are now, with climbing selling figures, I do foresee an artist also in 100 years taking their paintbrush, taking paint on a canvas, and is working like Neo Rauch is doing it in a very conservative and classical way. And where a gallerist like Judy Lübke, with a typical analog distribution process, is selling it with handshake on an analog fair to analog collectors. Of course, this will be possible also in the future. Revenge of the analog will be perhaps even increasing part. and mention this, all varieties of digital assistance will be in the value chain from producing to presenting to distributing. And their Instagram is only a very small aspect of this whole chain, which is misused for this misunderstood label of Instagram art.
And before we open up the podium to the public, do you guys have something to add?
I just wanted to add one thing, actually, that this idea of the analog, it's very true throughout history. And actually, Marshall McLuhan, back in the 60s, theorized that when a technology becomes obsolete and is not used anymore from the public or the society, it becomes a medium of art. And it's true for television, for film, celluloid tape, for instance, for photography, for now it's really true that when we embrace a technology, artists are really, really good in assessing the technology, not only celebrating the technology, but actually critically questioning the technology. And it means that previous technologies were now abandoned. They become medium for art, for artists to investigate the potential of the technology back in the past and as projection in the future as a critique of our current technology, which is really important. And the second thing, actually, it's very true that is this idea of the evolution of art languages, is not a progression. It's more like, I would say, almost a cycle, because you constantly reevaluate and reiterate what has been done with certain means in order to understand how you can do that things differently with other means. And so artists are really fundamental in that sense. And the fact that, for instance, institutions now are, if you take a museum or a gallery, we understand it as a building, as a space, as a physical presentation. But increasingly, institutions, including the one I'm working with, we do have a kind of a digital program, which means you take social media, Instagram, for now, in 20 years' time, they will be called, I don't know, A164, I don't know, and you create a program specifically for that channel. So you engage artists working with that sort kind of a channel as a venue in itself. So you understand the online world not as a reflection of the physical world, not as a translation of what you have in the gallery, but as something aside of it, something almost autonomous that relate to what you have in the gallery, but not necessarily is the same thing. And it shouldn't be the same thing. That we believe, actually, that there's this idea of online, it is not a reflection, is not a mirroring of the world, it's an expansion, it's something that is different. And, it can be better, it can be worse, that's, the jury's out, but it's something that is not the same thing.
There's also something you practice, right? In your booth, you have the physical and digital artworks, but also the virtually built, the AR world, right? You can experience, because you always need technology to add to your body to experience a new world. So how as a gallerist or as a museum director, how does the presentation of art change now that we have this new medium among us? VR or AR? VR.
Okay. So it's a great question about how we curate digital art with the evolving technologies, and especially VR. Anka Kultis Gallery opened in 2015, and in 2020, we augmented our space with a Anka Kultis Digital Gallery, which is a virtual reality exhibition. Since the 20s, with the hype of NFTs, most probably you all saw that there were many, many new places and spaces opening, presenting NFTs in galleries, on screens. And we have been showing new media since 2015, and what I saw that many of these exhibitions were literally throwing NFT works on screens without a lot of thinking behind of curation. It was just screens on the walls in all kinds of spaces. Of course, it's nice to bring new artists, but somehow it felt for me a little bit rushed and like not thought through. So I was always wondering how we could present these artists in a different way. So the virtual reality gallery, which was developed by Galleries Now, a platform in London presenting galleries exhibitions, allowed me to present digital art on digital walls in a massive, beautiful space looking like a museum without the constraint we had with the screens, meaning the ratio of the TV, of a TV screen. So many artists, as you know, they make digital works and they don't fit the TV ratio. So this gallery have to ask the artist to fit the ratio and to somehow distort the original work of the artist. So in my space, what we do, we can adapt the space. So if the artist made square works or rectangular of all kind of ratios, they fit the gallery space. And in addition, we can present them in a very immersive way. So in this space, they look like they would be presented on LED screens, super flexible size, depending on the works. So since now 2 years we have been making that, it works very well. So usually we have 2 shows in parallel, one in the physical space, one in Anka Kultus digital space, and the artists like it very much. So we don't share the link. I call it phygital because it's an experience between physical and digital. We invite visitors to come at the gallery, we offer them the headsets, and they come in the space and then can walk with the virtual gallery on their head. I have my virtual reality gallery with me here. Unfortunately, the internet is not strong enough, so my pages doesn't load. So I invite you to come to London one day and to visit the space directly from London. But this is your I think technologies have their limit always, and we very much dependent on electricity, on connectivity, yeah, all kind of things. But at my gallery, it works very well. We never had a problem. Or we had a problem once, but it's a nice story behind now for another time.
So, and now I would like to open up this podium for questions. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to contribute to ask a question? Anything?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for the really good talk. So I'm Ece. I'm studying mechanical engineering at the Vienna Technical University. And I actually am writing my thesis about deep learning and image processing, but I also wanted to see the artificial intelligence effects on the art. So it was really interesting to hear inputs. And I wanted to ask, actually, is the digital art actually sustainable?
Sustainable economically or practice-wise, or in what way sustainable? Or environmentally wise, or?
Actually, in all of that.
Okay. Yes, I mean, the digital art is an expansion of contemporary art, as contemporary was an expansion of modern art, as modern art was an expansion of classical art. It's a journey. So why shouldn't be sustainable in that way? I mean, is it kind of a food storage in the fridge sustainable? Yes, it is. It wasn't 150 years ago, now it is. You wouldn't imagine to have no food storage, for instance, because you don't have power grid. You will find a way to have power grid from solar or wind or whatever, even if you're not attached to the main grid. So I do think, personally, yes, in many of these ways, because artists are constantly trying to push the envelope of what is possible doing it, and they use whatever tools they find available. And some of the tools are great, some of the tools they will fail, some of the tools will evolve into morphing into something else, but yes, for sure, it's a direction that you can't put the genie out of the bottle now. And it's the same thing with blockchain technology, for instance. Blockchain technology has been associated with NFT, but really it is about actually authentication and provenance, and for many other sectors in society. You can buy and sell your car or a house in 5 years' time through an NFT authentication certificate. So it's something that is in society to stay. It's not necessarily a technology that has been popping up and then forgotten. That's my opinion. Maybe my colleague here have other opinions.
So starting with the economic perspective of sustainability, I think it's the same game with analog art. You never know whether a young artist will make it. You never know when you buy now for $1,000 something here at the fair, whether you will get $500 if you are in need for it tomorrow. This is a game. Ecological-wise, the origin of the word sustainability, ecological-wise, we must admit that the whole digital world is consuming such a fast amount of energy. And if the digital world is expanding on the same path of expansion like the last 2 decades, in 3 decades, the whole energy production in the world will be used by the digital part of the metaverse. If we don't react, this is a self-destroying prophecy that this will not come true. So no, ecologically, it is much more sustainable if a painter takes his brushstroke with original paint on a canvas.
I so much disagree with this. Because, yes, if you confine the art as a painter and brush and studio, yes. If you take in consideration the whole market, when the artwork goes from studio to storage or to gallery, and the gallery to museum or to fair, and then back, and then the acquisition, and then transport, and the logistic of it, it's just so much consuming in terms of power and ecological sustainability. The whole system, I mean, we have actually worldwide, I forgot now the term, this kind of a museum and gallery is a network for sustainability in terms of transport and logistics, basically. It's a worldwide network. There are about 150 museums worldwide, trying to figure out a way to be more sustainable in terms of transport, logistics, storage, and et cetera, because at the moment you have, you know, kind of just simple loans from one museum to another, from gallery to another across the world. That has creating and preparation and decreating and return of the work is massive. And you have art fairs, 200 art fairs around the world, 300, 400, I don't know how much, all actually shipping going back and forth from galleries to studio to the fair and back. So this whole thing actually, if it's accounted as a part of the ecological sustainability, is much higher than the consume and resources provided or necessary for the digital art.
So I do agree, and I think it is necessary to answer your question step by step in this value chain. First point, I think we do agree producing digital art consumes a lot of energy compared with a brushstroke first. Then distributing and presenting them, shipping them all around the world, all his arguments are very much in favor of also for me. But what does it mean? Don't we have a Spark art fair in 10 or 20 years due to digitalization? No, there will be a flourishing Spark art fair in 10, 20 years. And we will travel from Vienna to Hong Kong to Beijing to go to these. We do it both. So we consume in the analog way and plus in the digital way. That will be the reality of energy consumption.
Yeah. It depends how we produce this energy, you know.
That's the next question.
It's the next question. So is it fuel? Is it fossil fuel? Is it power? Is it wind? Is it solar? Whatever. I mean, that's the way we, I mean, the airline industries is like stigmatized as the biggest sort of a waste of power and emission of carbon dioxide in the world. If you look at the figures, it's 2% of the total emission of carbon dioxide, because most of them comes from housing, heating, and housing, air conditioning. And the second one is food production. meat production specifically. So if you take, we need to take a look at the facts and the data and kind of contextualize the data for what they really are. And of course, it's not that we need food, we need heating, we need air conditioning if you're living in a desert, as I do. However, actually, if it depends actually how you want to live and what kind of a principle you want to follow. And as society, I think we are kind of probably okay in terms of finding solution for that one. I'm not a climate crisis denier. I think we do really have a big problem on our plate. However, I think if there is willing and a kind of a government agreement to find solution, we can find them.
I go a step further. Without AI, we won't be able to solve the climate question. Sure. It's only AI which will help us to avoid climatic catastrophes.
Maybe I can add something more. There is actually in the Earth an increase of the production of the microchips. So if we won't be able to produce more computers in the future because we have less ingredients, like let's say down the earth, like less metals or less chips. So that's why I asked actually the question, because maybe the governments also need to support the digital world as about art or production or anything else, like an industry. So, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, how my question is, the definition of art changes with every perspective on art. And every era has an own perception of the definition of art. Modernity, for example, doesn't promote beauty as the first thing to produce in art. And how do you think the AI or the modern era has made the definition of art changing, or how does AI change the definition of art?
That sounds like a question for you, Anka. No? You work with artists because also you okay. No, but no, because you mentioned beauty, and beauty is one of my curatorial concept. Beauty is always a big factor, because I mean, just look at the fair. Everybody loves it because it's so spacious. That can date back to the Baroque ages, where you have like these viewpoints, and because we humans like to have pleasant views and we like beauty, but sometimes we need to be disturbed, and I think the same thing applies to digital art as well. As we said, it started out with pleasant pictures, and now it's also disturbing. But people, we need beauty sometimes, and that will never go away from art, because there's so much horror in the world. We just want to be distracted with be it a screen or an oil painting. It's a window into another world, and we want to be distracted. So I think in every era of art production, you will find beauty. Sometimes it was just not part of the avant-garde, and it got forgotten. But if you look through the centuries, there will always be beauty in the production of art. And now I'm going to hand over to Auronda first, and then Thomas will also have something to add.
No, I will be really fast. With digital art, for example, we experience that artists work with interactive artwork, with experience. Then art is much more now with digital art, something that you have to make an experience compared to the past. And this is even connected with the concept of author. I mean, now even the spectator can be author of an artwork. It's not all with AI. You can collect, I don't know, your heartbeat, like Krista Kim, that collect from the public all the heartbeat. Then an artwork is made from a collective things and different perspective.
Yeah, if your question is about if beauty is changing the concept or canon of beauty through AI, maybe, I don't know, maybe yes, actually. Also, beauty is very subjective, okay? So it's what is beautiful for me is not beautiful for Thomas, is not beautiful for Ian or Anka or Auronda, but, you know, and vice
It was
versa.
just one example. Another example would be in the era of Romanticism. There was a change from the era to Classicism before. People didn't want to paint things how they are, but they wanted to imply something mystical. And so the conception of art changed. And now at our time, AI maybe is the same thing and changes our perception of art. And that was the question, how it does that?
I think it's too early to say, probably. In terms of working with databases, generating artwork and output actually based on those sort of machine learning. Yes and no. I think that there are actually some evolution in the way you recontextualize older styles. That's what I think, that there is one thing. And so you have this idea of, you mentioned the neo-romanticism, and there is actually a certain sort of a direction, let's say, of artists working with AI or other advanced technology to produce or to kind of present, let's say not produce, present outputs which are actually incorporating, for instance, the sort of a almost natural scientific outputs, or this kind of a neo-Baroque idea where you take a style and you morph it into something else, but you can recognize certain things. And you do have also this, Auronda was mentioning now, this idea of the holistic approach, which means that you have a number of outputs from artists embracing the idea of almost a sort of surrounding environmental context, through colors, to sounds, to this presenting as an artwork. It's more about an atmosphere than a visual output. And that's something that we can see popping up. Now, if these one are actually fundamental changes in the aesthetic canons, I think it's still early to say, but there are a few things in terms of trends and directions.
When I was asking myself, what do I wear today? I had in my mind that the majority of those sitting at the table will be dressed in creative black and having high-profiled sneakers. And I dressed myself against this aesthetic norm. An AI agent could never act against his program. It will always fulfill the algorithm, feed it by data sets. I, as a human being, have an intention. I can reflect whether I will break the code or not. An artificial intelligent agent cannot break the rules of the code. And with this first idea, we must understand that all what is produced by AI is always an as-if result. It cannot feel. It cannot have tears. I had tears when I entered because I was sitting underneath a tree this morning at breakfast, and this started my allergic engine this morning. And I never have allergic reactions. It is always as if it is without any bloody wetware. And that produces a certain output of artwork with shaping our understanding of what is beauty. This is creating an output of articles. Look at the software bots that you do not know that they are bots, with more or less meaningful, powerful claims. But it's always as if manipulated by others. Look at Putin using these social bots to manipulate American elections and Brexit decisions. So we must understand that we are in a manipulating world where others can use AI. And for this, I put a stress, and we all have done this, how important it is to have the authorship of human beings in the whole creation process of art, that the human being and not a robot who will sit in 5 years here, and you will not make the possibility to differentiate whether it is Thomas or his clone, wait 5 years, then you will have it in such a discussion. It must be always a human being as the final author who is autonomous and the decision maker in the whole process. Otherwise, we get lost. Art will get lost, humans will get lost, and mankind will get lost.
Especially, I like your point, because I think it's the error. It will be more human than machine. And I was reading recently an article, I can't remember who wrote it, about Midjourney, text-to-image generation, basically, or other sort of AI tools. And the article was actually it was speculating a bit. It didn't really have enormous evidence, but I think that it was actually grasping a grain of truth, that as AI text-to-image tools are becoming better because they source, more billions of images, and they can learn more speedily and process more information and data, they become more and more and more precise about your prompts. So you enter a prompt and you will get exactly that. So the margin of errors, it will be diminishing. That means the creativity will be diminishing, because a lot of creativity comes from errors. A lot of creativity comes from the happy accident of the unexpected combination of things. At the moment, text to images is still fun. You go online, you text to image something, and something really weird comes up usually, which is also kind of an interesting thing, because it makes you thinking what is missing, what is added, and it injects this creativity process. And as they become better, it will be really, really not the case, because it will be super precise. So the human will need to add the error, or the sort of a error lookalike, to create something which is, the unexpected edge of it. So that's I think, is something to think about it.
And I think it's even more daily. I must admit that I have wet hands, being innerly, by sitting on such a discussion in front of you. An AI agent will never have wet hands in such a situation. To see me in a mirror of art, to see me confronted by an entity who does not really have my feelings, my inner disturbances, my fallacies, my failures, to be judged. AI is judging. Look at the American juridical process. To be judged by an entity which cannot understand me by heart, by my inner substance, must be on the second lane in the future development. And first lane have to be the human lane, and the human have to sit in the driving seat. The human has to be the author in the art development. And that does not mean that I do not embrace technology changes and possibilities, but never forget the primacy of human beings with wet hands and heartful feelings.
So I, as a human being with heartful feelings, will now allow one last question, because we're running out of time. So is there anybody who would like to ask something? Okay, I see one raised hand. We have the microphone circulating. Please, second row, first row on the right, from my point of view.
Hello together. My name is Hans from Berlin. I'm interested in your opinion about more economical aspects. Artists have to sell art to pay their rent, to buy food and all that. And for that you need collectors who buy this kind of art. And that's why I would be interested in your opinion. Are you afraid, or do you see a danger of losing a very important group of collectors who won't be connected to this new form of digital art? Or how do you want to get them being fascinated of this new form of art?
Let's ask the gallerist.
So digital art has been around since 60 years. It comes in addition to traditional media as painting, sculpture, drawing. And I have been working with digital artists since many years now, and they are harder to sell in that sense that it comes in addition, like photography. There will be always a certain percentage in collections of digital art, which is maybe lower than traditional paintings. I think that the new generation of collectors, from what I see, the collectors who are under 35 years old, they would mainly collect digital art. So the new generation of collectors will consider much more digital art than, I would say, traditional art. I'm not saying that painting will disappear ever. The responsibility of a gallery, as I think, is helping artists to promote their works and to place their works and to sell their works. And at the beginning, when I started working with young artists, it was very hard. You have to invest a lot of time and money in promoting these artists. And little by little, like, some artists find a home in a museum. Like Molly Soda recently sold some works. We have been showing her since, we're the first gallery showing her since 6-7 years. And then some museums acquire their work, and then some collectors. So it takes time, or a lot of time. Usually, most of the artists work and have a side job. So our job is to promote them. And being here, for example, was wonderful, and showing Signe Pier's retrospective with her digital works, because it's also a validation by an art fair, and the collectors, they decide slightly quicker. Because if you show the artist at the gallery, it's great. If you promote the artist, if we speak about the artist. But the support, the overall support by art fairs, by curators who curate or made curate these works in biennales, the curators and directors of the museums. So it's a whole, I would say, ecosystem helping each other. But we have to start somewhere. Don't be negative and saying, oh, this is too much work, or this won't work. It's always like your heart has to speak, and then you develop it through your passion and promoting the artists who speak to you. Like, I work with artists who speak to me, who I think have something interesting to say, and then if there is anybody else who is interested, we keep on going. But I think it's a whole ecosystem which is needed. Like, it's not only the artists, it's not only the galleries. We, as a whole group of gallerists, curators, art fairs, museum directors, and press, I'm very much appreciate working on press as well, because the writing, this is what will stay in like 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And people who will make researches about some artists who, like, they have their ups and downs, they will come back. So it's very important to work at every level, not only thinking about sales today, but writing and all kinds of presentations.
If I may add one thing about the collecting intelligence, let's say, or collecting practices in terms of digital art, there is a couple of things actually that now actually collect. We see actually when we curate things that there are actually collectors very curious about the realm of digital arts and kind of are reaching out to say, okay, can you just sort of maybe not introduce, but kind of articulate a bit more what it means, why Refi Canada, for instance, is up there in this art fair, for instance, or why actually Signe actually is in the booth of Anna Curtis, etc., etc. And it's a journey, okay? So there will be obviously new generation of collector, but also existing generation of collector are actually kind of more and more that kind of looking at that and seeing what comes up. And there are two things that are important. One thing is that artists are experimenting with digital realm, not only digital native, so to speak, artists, forgive the term, but also established artists, blue chip artists, mid-career artists, working from a studio, working with established gallery. They really kind of want to expand their practice and try to figure it out if they can use digital means as a particular way to produce work. One very banal example, it will be producing a series of work which are changing every 8 hours or 8 days or 8 years. So you have this kind of dynamic artwork which actually can change according to certain criteria which are embedded in the work, in the conception of the work. And artists could do only this thing through digital means. You can't do with a painting or you can't do with a sculpture unless you go back to the house of the collector in 8 days or 8 years or whatever to change it. And that's, you know, one thing that artists will bring collectors with them in the digital realm because they really, really want to experiment and expand their practice. And the second thing is that this idea of the digital realm, it's really, again, it's not a separate thing from contemporary art. It's really kind of something that is pushing the envelope, is an expansion, and it will be integrated. There will be more galleries specialized in digital art and more galleries specialized in contemporary art, but what we proposed, for instance, recently about this kind of idea of the phygital, okay, horrible term, again, we didn't invent it, but it's important because you have this hybridity between physical and digital, and artists are conceiving work which are digitally driven. It could be AI driven, it could be robotic driven, it could be whatever, or VR, AR, or mixed reality, but the output, it might be actually physical. It might be an installation, an object, a sculpture, a painting, whatever. And conversely, it can be linked. There will be a physical artwork linked with a digital element that kind of allow the artwork to change. So it's something that is I wouldn't say that, you know, you will lose collectors because collector will actually, you know, they will be renewing their curiosity and their interest for artwork and artists actually experimenting and producing formats which are actually not available today or were not available in the past. And that's an exciting thing for a collector journey, I mean, you know, it comes also, you know, Anka, you mentioned the validity of how the validation of an artwork, it comes not from one thing. A validation of an artwork comes from generations. An artwork is validated because a sector of a society decide in space and time that that artwork has something to say to that society. And this message is powerful, the interpretation, it renews through generation of viewers, and that will be the same for digital artwork. It's not really a different thing.
Well, that was actually a very beautiful end to this discussion. So I would invite you all to go back into the fair and immerse yourself in art and decide on your own which art is going to last and what does not. And you can play your own little part in art history by acquiring it. So thank you so much and see you out there. Thank you guys, of course.